All right. Looks like I might be here. Might be live. It says I'm live, so I'm going to believe it. If you're out there, let me know. Check the sound, the video, see how everything's going. Oh my gosh. Hair's a wreck. But I'm here. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. We got a little bit of a power issue. Maybe 30 minutes. So it's going to be a quickie. But if you're out there, come in and say hi. Pile into the comment section. Push into the room. We're going to hang out. We're going to talk. We're going to chat. I don't know. I don't even know what we're going to talk about. I got a few things we can talk about. Hey, Scott, good to see you. If you guys are out there, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. Hello, Hava. Great to see y'all. Everybody pile in, y'all. Let's get in here. We don't have much time. Audio and video is good. Thank you, Pat. Here in a minute, you're going to see me reach over and unplug the laptop because I've got to balance. I've been balancing for about 30 minutes how much charge to put on the laptop, and then the laptop can't run for very long at the same time as the show because it draws too much power. So if I got enough power on the laptop and I have enough power to run the internet and my light stays on, we're going to be all right. Hello, Ethan. Good to see y'all. Y'all pile in here. Been having a couple of good shows, getting some attention. But I hope everybody's doing all right. I hope everybody's okay. There's still light coming in this window because we haven't put a bookshelf there yet. And it's starting to get darker earlier. So it won't be long. That's all I'll have is this light. War Dog Heim from the blue skies of Montana. I see thee as well. Greetings, everybody. Glad to have you here. This is the Bunker Nation Show. My name is Michael Bunker, and I'm going to be your host for the evening. I'm glad you could be here. Bunker Nation, where we think and thrive. Hello, Frank. We got to do this thing real quick, this box thing. It's kind of how we do it, and then we'll be right back. All right, that's me. That's the box thing. All right, everybody, pile in here. What we're going to be doing today is some Q&A. I got a few things I might want to talk about, but who knows? It's been kind of an eclectic time. You know, we talk about preparedness. We talk about survival. I'm an expert on those two topics. We can talk about homesteading. We can talk about gardening. We can talk about theology. We can talk about philosophy. We can talk about Russian literature. We can talk about a lot of different things. But you guys pile in here, and if you have a question or comment or anything you want to talk about, let's do it. Thank you, Scott. We appreciate being able to record the sermons on Sunday at the local church. So kind of what I'm doing today is I just wanted to come down here and hang out with you guys. And I usually come and I'm usually prepared and I usually have a rant, a lesson to deliver. But sometimes, I was talking to my wife today, as I enjoy doing. And you can see my face right here is starting to swell again. A little bit of allergies. It had gone down some. We're going to work on it. How close am I to getting Sean on the show to talk about God in the Storm with us? All I got to do is ask him. I've been trying to get Garrett Bradford on here. I'd love to get Kayla Ray on here, and I'd love to get Sean Tuen on here. But I'm going to get Sean on here, hopefully very soon. Yeah, I definitely want to start having guests. Something new to me after 20 years of carrying this thing by myself. I definitely want to start having guests. I think, if I can find interesting people that I'm interested in talking to, then I definitely want to do that. Anyways, like I said, I normally do have a topic or something that I want to talk about. And so then I do that. So I was talking to my wife today, and I told her how that makes me feel. I said, a lot of times people come and they're interested, and I'm happy that they're interested in what I have to say and my take on things and what things I'm thinking about. And they're interested in the show that I'm going to do and what I'm going to talk about. They don't particularly have any questions, either that or they don't know what questions to ask, or they haven't thought of any questions, or they feel like they're not qualified to ask questions. And so they're there to listen and to learn. And I appreciate that. Hallelujah. However, sometimes it's good. I was telling my wife, there are so many things that I'm interested in. There's so many things that I'm interested in talking about that we never get to. We never even touch on it. I have written entire books on things that we never talk about. And so because of that, people don't know what questions to ask. They don't ask the questions. I never get to those topics. And so what I want to do is I want to open up the floor to anything you guys want to talk about. Yes, keeping it interesting to me is very, very important. I already know what I know. And so sometimes I'm interested in hearing what other people have to say, and especially people that are making a mark in the business as indies or as people who are doing things their own way outside of the structure of the system. There's a system of music, there's a system in sports, there's a system in art, there's a system in writing, in publishing, and those systems tend, not always, but they tend towards dumbing down material to the mass man, because that's where all the money is. And I'm okay with writers making money. I'm perfectly fine with it. I'd like to make some someday, but it doesn't always. And it's a real weird thing in publishing, because in publishing they have zero interest in making money. They will put out the worst flotsam and jetsam in the history of the world, as long as it aligns with their political aspirations and views, their cultural targets. But in every other business, they generally kind of dump things down for the masses. And so you end up with this very kind of homogenized type of material that is not always advantageous for somebody who is just now, as an example, 10 minutes before I hit play or whatever you hit live, I was reading Solzhenitsyn, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the famous Russian author, who authored A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich at a time in the Soviet Union when such things were not done. And his most famous work, The Gulag Archipelago, which is a work of nonfiction, where he took note of and studied the Stalinist and post-Stalin Gulag system, and even the foundation, how the communist system came into power and what methods they used and all that. But I was just now reading a book, which I've read before. I think I've read just about everything that Solzhenitsyn has written that has been published in English. Some of it has not been published in English yet. But I was just reading a book called For the Good of the Cause. And it deals with this same thing, that in the Soviet Union, there was a system of publication. This is post-classic Russian literature when the Soviets took over. And great literature was not particularly encouraged. Party literature was encouraged, which is where we are right now in American publishing. And so a work of art like Ivan Denisovich was only able to see the light of day because Khrushchev saw it as a tool to rid himself and the country of some old Stalinist ideas and heavy Stalinist bureaucracy. It's a great comparison to what's kind of going on here in publishing, although we don't have the Soviet system of approval of literary works. We have a more onerous, intellectually dishonest, social woke party type of censorship in most mainstream publishing, which is why I encourage indies, and especially our book, God in the Storm, would never be published. I won't say never. It would almost likely never be published by any mainstream publishing entity today. Nathan says, let me pop it up here. I could do that. I don't do this often enough. I know every generation believes they are going to see the end times. Where do you believe we are on the timeline, if you had to guess? We are just short of the seventh Trump. We're in the sixth, probably. That would take a lot of unwinding. I recommend a book, which I have shown here several times, which I recommend it, but most of you will never be able to read it, by Isaac Newton, on the Revelation and Daniel. But the last chapter of it, which is not in Latin, is really, really good. If you only get it and read the last chapter, he basically lays out the entire system of Daniel and Revelation, which have parallels and have the same interpretive key, and goes through a lot of the events that have taken place and where we are in the timeline. All right. War Dog Heim says, well, this year I tried to knock the knapweed back without chemicals, just ran a harrow behind my pickup truck, knocking down everything down and scratching the dirt up and overseeded with flax. Where it's so thick, no knapweed came up. The rest of it was still rotten with knapweed. Yep. I've had the exact same thing happen here. It wasn't knapweed, but other weeds. And where we spilled wheat or sowed it very thickly, the wheat didn't get as tall and the wheat heads weren't as big, but they were very productive and we didn't have the weeds to deal with. What do you think about the Atlantic and Post articles are expecting violence in the election? I think that in their particular cases, they're prescribing violence. They are inciting violence and they are threatening violence. But I think that the actual call to say we're going to have violence after the election is almost certain. And I've talked about that at some length because we don't have the ability, or I don't see a way to back out of it. I don't see a way out. We're in a Gordian knot, so to speak, of it's a very, very interesting time because most people are not familiar with revolutions. They're not familiar with how governments work. They're not familiar with how revolutions work. And so it would take so much for me to explain the rubric or the filter through which I watch events that, and I've tried to do it over the last 5 months, and I hope that's been helpful to you. But hold on, let me get rid of this banner here. Subscribe. Go to YouTube and subscribe. But let me give you an example. Protests, when they are authentic, ought to be supported. When they're peaceful, when they have a goal in mind that is achievable, protests that are authentic always appeal to the middle of the roader. You always are going to have hard line people who are anti any protests. These are fascistic minded people who cannot see a protest and be angry. Either they benefit too much in the system of the way it is, or they have no concept or understanding of freedom and how it is gained and how it is maintained. But there's a large portion of the population that just don't like anybody stepping out of line. They like absolute uniformity. They call it law and order, but it's not law and order. It is a disordered system of authoritarianism. But there's a large group in the middle of the road, and I hesitate even using that term, but there's a large group of people who have the ability to look on things and go, okay, you know, maybe they're a little extreme, or maybe I don't like what they're saying, but I could see some of their arguments. I could see where perhaps I watched the Wall Street protests back in the Occupy Wall Street time. It was a foreshadowing of what we're going through today, and there was a lot of Marxism and a lot of hardcore agitation going on. But for the most part, there were a lot of people there who saw what was going wrong. They saw what was going wrong with the bankers, with the fact that the government's always bailing out Wall Street and Main Street, not so much. They saw that corporatism, which is a perversion and a bastardization of capitalism, is not particularly working, and it needs to be stopped. Some bankers, when they steal billions of dollars, ought to go to jail. when the 2008 crash happened and there was criminal activity and nobody went to jail, you're going to have protests, and those protests are legitimate. My point is that middle of the roaders are people who are rational or have some empathy, can see those things, and they go, okay, I can see this. Let's look at what we have today. Let me start off by saying that legitimate protests appeal to those people. Any legitimate protest is appealing to support. They're appealing to reasonable-minded people. They're appealing to people to be on their side. At the very least, be hands off. But look at what we have today. The people who are engaged in the violence, engaged in the looting, engaged in walking through Manhattan chanting, we're going to burn down your businesses. This is not an appeal to the middle of the road. This is not an appeal to the viewer. This is not an appeal to empathetic people. It is designed for one reason, and that reason is to provoke fear. This is a classic Marxist communist tactic. As I mentioned, go read Alexander Solzhenitsyn. This idea that you are to be so afraid that they provoke a reactionary action, and then through their apparatus in the deep state in both parties, implement corrections that are socialist and Marxist. That's the goal. Most people who are listening to me have no concept, no prism, no filter by which to view that. So when the question is how do we see a way out? I don't see a way out. I don't see a way out without violence. The people are too committed. They have decided. I explained this to my wife. I don't think they were ready for this. I don't think this was when this was supposed to happen in the minds of the lifelong agitators for Marxism and communism. I don't think they were ready. One more generation, they would have got it free. They've been in charge of education. You people, a lot of you are sending your children to them to be educated. One more generation, they would have gotten it all for free. Very little bloodshed. And I don't think they were ready to run with it. And I'm not a Trump fan, and I'm not a Trump voter, but I believe that the election of Donald Trump in 2016 forced their hand. I think he had every intention of disrupting the deep state, and he did so. Whether he did it rightly or wrongly, illegally or not, that's not the topic. But I believe their hand got, they realized that people, pedophiles and others, were going to go to jail. Criminals in the deep state, likely in both parties, who we're seeing now unify behind Joe Biden. That whole Pizzagate pedophile group of bipartisan con men who have been robbing people and raping people for my entire life. Both parties. That group realized the gig was probably going to be up. And I think this whole thing got escalated because of that. So I think that the Atlantic in particular, which is a hard leftist Marxist rag, and the Washington Post as well. And by the way, everybody out there, all you're a middle of the road guy, you're both sides guy. I am as hardcore and anti-Marxist as there has ever been. I just wrote a book on it. I am far more anti-Marxist than you are. I'm anti-fascist too. I'm anti-authoritarian. I'm not anti-government fundamentally. I'm anti this government. Don't try to put me in your head because I won't fit. So that's the thing. I don't see a way out. And there isn't a way out right now that's appeared before us. Both sides have scheduled violence, have scheduled agitation. They've scheduled it. It's on the schedule. I could be, I'm not going to say wrong because I haven't predicted anything, but I could say that I can't see a way out. All right. This is the Newton book, Sir Isaac Newton's Daniel and the Apocalypse. That's correct. If you can get it. And I'm not promising you're going to get it and you're going to be able to read it. A lot of it's in Latin and a lot of it is in Isaac Newton-esque. What's up, Daniel? Better title name, Observations upon the Prophecies of Daniel and the Apocalypse of St. John. That's true. Avery says, biggest concern I have about them, the articles, etc., is location, location, location directly after the election, between election and inauguration. It's going to be very interesting because the tricks, the dirty tricks that are planned for usually for October, we don't have a clue what they are yet. We know they're going to trot out accusations, anonymous accusations against Trump. That's just going to happen. They've been doing that for 3.5, 4 years. And a lot of times they're not anonymous. As James Carville used to say, drag a $50 bill through a trailer park. You can find somebody that'll accuse anybody of anything, and they've done that. And they've been doing that for 3.5, 4 years. Republicans, too, have their plans. We're likely to see indictments handed down in October. And so there's a lot of these things that are planned. There's always a trap planned. They almost never work. Some people will say it worked in 2016, but the electoral tidal wave was a fait accompli. It was a done deal, regardless of what Comey did or anything else. That's another story for another day. But some things are going to happen in October we don't even know about. They're not on our radar. Nobody told us about. They've been planned for a long time, and they're going to be dropped. Everybody will act surprised. The media will be like, oh my gosh, somebody just came out and said that Trump likes to eat Dalmatians and wants to make a coat out of Dalmatians. We have 15 witnesses. And then, like I said, we're likely to see indictments against people on the left. And so there goes the light. Let's see how long this thing's going to last. Oh, I got to pull out this plug or else we're going to be a lot shorter. All right. We're going to see how long we get to go now with darkness falling. Don Harms says, I found this book online, Newton's Observations on the Prophecies of Daniel. That's the one to get. And you might be able to get it for free for a Kindle. Yeah, the October surprise, that's always a trick. It's always something that they're gonna roll out. This year will be remarkable in it because the October surprise has been coming at everyone from the left since the day after November 8th, 2016. If you just aren't stupid enough, if you're just smart enough to be able to look at it, it's been a drumbeat of October surprises where this is the thing that's going to get him. Now we're going to roll out some lady who remembers a party in 25 years ago or some yearbook. And so, those things, the whole Russiagate nonsense, all that stuff's been going on. And this is what happens when you elect charlatans from both parties. And they butt heads. And I could have put the word "are" before butt heads. And that's what you're going to get. All right, you guys, get your questions and comments in here. My whole point about what I was saying about the protest and the looters and the fact that any legitimate protest, any legitimate stance against some evil, some wrong, if you want to go back to the civil rights days or anything else, MLK was appealing as much as he was able to reasonable people. He knew people were going to be beaten, clubbed into a coma. He knew what was going to go and happen, and that was his goal. That was the goal. because reasonable people would watch people getting beaten and chewed up by dogs, and they would go, maybe that's not what we should be doing. That is the sign of a legitimate movement of the people, regardless of who the leaders are, whether they're communists or crypto communists or whatever. And so one thing we don't see today is we don't see this appeal to reasonability. Even the people who pretend to it in the media are threatening. I appreciate it so much. Before the power runs too low, which is it's dangerously low, but we're going to see how far we can go. I may get cut off in mid-sentence, but that's just the way it goes. So my conclusion is that these are not legitimate protests. And while there are legitimate objections to police misbehavior, and there are arguments to be made, and that is a peaceful conversation we should be having. This is not that. The Molotov cocktails is not that peaceful, reasonable conversation we should be having. Nor is it intended to be. Remember, these things never happen on accident. Now, some people, like I said, you don't have the ability to look through this with a proper amount of understanding and historical knowledge to know how these things work. But let me give you some personal experience. Many years ago, about 20 years ago, I was running around in these circles. I was a public speaker. Daniel remembers. And I was doing a lot of stuff on my own. I did some speaking for churches and for other organizations. But I spoke all over the country and all over the world. All different types of groups. I spoke in front of an all-black college in Atlanta, and I spoke in front of a hardcore militia group in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I spoke to all different kinds of people everywhere. I was willing to talk to anybody. And there was an interesting thing because I was running around with a lot of these groups, and I got to talk to a lot of people. If you don't remember, in the early 90s, there was a large militia movement that had gained some ground and had become pretty potent. And there was a COINTELPRO type of program to intercede or interdict the growth of militias, which led to some pretty blatant government misbehavior, including Waco. After that, a lot of these groups kind of went underground. They were still out there. They were still, unlike what the media will tell you, from my personal experience, they were not terroristic. They were not fascistic. They were not white supremacists. They were mainly mainstream people who were worried about the New World Order. They were worried about global government. And the government would say that. The president of the United States would say, we want this. But if you mentioned it, people would go, oh, you're one of those wackos. You're one of those people. And so I'm just giving you the lay of the land. The militia movement had kind of moved underground and was a lot quieter, although still active. And one thing I learned very quickly is that every group that I ever talked to, every group I spent any time with, was so infiltrated with government agitators, government. I don't want you to think this is what I'm talking about, how you don't know what I'm talking about. They're not government employees. Let me tell you how you get yourself a mark or somebody to be an infiltrator. This is a true story. Some slight details changed. A guy living in middle America, perhaps Missouri or Arkansas. He's a patriot. He wants to stop the Patriot Act. He wants to stop all this government spying. He's not interested in globalism. And so he starts going to meetings. And there's a lot of talk in these meetings like, hey, nobody's saying let's go blow up buildings. Nobody's trying to kill innocent people. There's none of that at any place I ever went to. Most of these meetings are just people standing up and talking about what they're afraid of. They're afraid that they're going to be in internment camps. They're afraid there's going to be this, and it was a lot of fear, and people just talking in general. What would we do? What would we do if this happened? What would we do if that happened? This guy starts going to several of these meetings. He gets somewhat randomly arrested, threatened with a felony charge. I don't remember the exact details, but it was a gun-related charge, some bureaucratic step that he had missed in filling out a permit or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. That attempt to get him on a gun charge failed. His relationship with his wife was already on the rocks. Agents of the government approached his wife and promised her some largesse, whether it was a job in the government or a secretarial job or money, or I don't know what it was, but they offered her, and she made a charge of domestic violence against him. Now, you may not know this, but if you're even charged, not found guilty, charged with domestic violence, they can take your guns and they can stop you from owning them. And this is what happened. He received a letter after his wife charged him with domestic violence. And the letter said he had to divest himself of all guns. And he couldn't have any in his house. He couldn't have any anywhere. He couldn't have any on his person, in his vehicles, or anything like that. Sometime after that, he was pulled over. And hold on just a minute. Sometime after that, he was pulled over. He had a gun in the car, and he was charged with a felony. They brought him into a room, and they said, "We don't want you to go to jail forever. We don't want you to lose your relationship with your wife. And so what we're going to do," hold on just a minute, "is we're going to make you a deal. We just want you to keep going to meetings. Do the same thing you're already doing." And it started off with, "Hey, just take notes. Let us know if there's anybody out there who's a little boisterous, somebody who talks about weapons, who talks about bombs, who talks about crimes." And of course, from my experience, there aren't any of those things going on. The only people that ever bring up guns, bombs, and crime are the people that are working for them, trying to entrap somebody. And since nobody bit, then they got him to start that thing, which is going around. And he would go into meetings, and I talked to several people who knew the guy and knew him as this whole process went through, and everybody was on to him. And he would go into meetings, and they would break for coffee, and he would go up there. Somebody would say, "What if we could get hand grenades? I may know somebody." And most of the time, those people would go, and they would all talk, and they're like, "This guy's, trying to get somebody in trouble." It got to the point where almost everybody at the meetings was those guys. The only people going to the meetings were those guys. That's when I stopped going. And I wasn't there for any other reason than I was a preacher, and I was preaching the gospel. And one of those parts of the gospel was nonviolence. Not pacifism, but reasonable nonviolence. I tell you that whole story not because I want you to know that about me, but to tell you that that's how they infiltrate these groups, and that's how these groups end up. You have groups that the entire group is made up of people being controlled by agents of the government or some government or a foreign government. They're all working for them, and nobody in the group is actually a civilian. So it's very easy to say, "Hey, why don't we all pile in the car? We're all going to go leave Portland, and we're going to drive in this van, and we're going to go over to Kenosha, and we're going to start trouble. We're going to try to recruit people along the way." So you have groups that are entirely peopled by these assets that have been recruited by some government, some agency somewhere, someone doing something. And then you have private agencies, private groups that are doing this, billionaires who are trying to get this kind of stuff done. So pretty soon you end up with a pretty large, what looks like a movement, but nobody is interested in winning over the middle ground. Nobody. Do you see anybody out there today reasonably trying to win over people? And the reason you don't is because that's not a goal. That's not what they're looking to do. And that's why I'm telling you, I know more than you do. I know how these things work. And not only that, but I've read thousands of books, most of them about the Russian Revolution and about revolutions in other places. For example, the book that I just wrote on the Cambodian genocide. And I'm telling you, I don't see a way out. If these were reasonable people, if these were people who were actually willing to protest or were wanting to protest, and they actually thought that there was some political aim that they could get, then we would know that. That doesn't exist. You don't think of the Braveheart scene. Everybody wanted peace except for William Wallace. He says, I'm going to go out there and give them hear their demand. Everybody was like, well, let's just surrender. Let's see what we can get. All right, I'll go out there. And they told him, we'll give you lands, we'll give you titles, we'll give you all this. And he's like, no, here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn around and ride back to England, stopping in every town along the way to beg forgiveness for thousands of years of injustice and murder and genocide and all this kind of stuff. And then stick your head up your own ass. That is not the sign of somebody who's looking for a peaceful solution to the impasse. Of course, that movie was written by somebody with an agenda, but that was the agenda, and that's the agenda today. Peace is not on the agenda. You don't come out, whether you're the NBA or the NFL, and say, well, listen, white people or privileged people or straight people or whoever it is, what we want you to do is let us take all your shit and burn it down, and let us have your children, and you just kill yourself, and we'll plant flowers in the ashes. That's not the demands you make if you expect there to be a peaceful solution. There are some simple peaceful solutions that could be gotten to here, if anybody was looking for one, but nobody is. So when you look at these demands, when you see these demands for massive amount of reparations and huge chunks of land, and nobody's allowed to say ma'am or sir anymore, and you know, who knows, whatever wackiness is being demanded every 5 minutes, this is not conducive to a peaceful solution. All right, so you guys tricked me. You tricked me into doing a rant anyway. But I'm here for you guys. I don't know how much time I have left. We're 37 minutes into this thing. So you guys, if you have a question or a comment or something you want to talk about, how did you trick me into doing that? I ended up talking about something anyway. Is Daniel and the Apocalypse the same book? They're in the Bible together, and they're also in Newton's book together. But yes, and they also are spiritually the same book. The angel gave the book to Daniel and told him to seal it till the end, and it was unsealed in Revelation. They are the same book. So I don't know particularly how you meant the question. Let me hold on. Don't look down because I don't have any pants on. Hold on a second. Because there seems to be some confusion. This is the book, The Prophecies of Daniel and the Apocalypse, Isaac Newton. And there are some other titles that are the same book. But this is the book. It doesn't have to be this exact version of the book. If you're reading a book by Isaac Newton that is talking about the observations on Daniel and the Apocalypse, that's the book. They have different titles. The reason why is this book was written in the 1700s, and the book is in the public domain. And anybody, I could go and print this book out and put a different title on it and start selling it. That's what happened. All right, Fran with the best comment of the day. Not much I can say about that. All right, if you guys are out there, if you got a question or comment, go ahead and do it. If you would like, hit the like button. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. Yeah, you want one in English, and he actually wrote in English too. But he writes in Latin throughout the book. That was common, pretty common at the time in physics and in theology. All right, so I'm here for you guys. Got a few more minutes. Might be able to squeeze out 5 more minutes if somebody's got a question or a comment before we go. I'm here for you guys. That's what I do. I think it ended up being an interesting conversation. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you OMG'd a little bit. Many believe life will go back to normal soon. I don't see that as a possibility. Life will be different. Yep, it already is. And it's hard to imagine. I even watched shows on TV that were filmed last year, and they look weird. They just look weird because of what's going on. Well, Fran, greetings. Glad you could make it. All of you who are just now joining me, you haven't missed anything because this immediately appears on YouTube on my channel, youtube.com/bunkdad, or just go to YouTube and type in Michael Bunker. You'll find my channel, and this video will be live within minutes, 10 minutes maybe. So you haven't missed anything, but you should go back and watch it all because it turned out to be a moderately interesting discussion. All right, y'all. We're past 40 minutes. I got to go. I'm going to run out of power. I appreciate all of you. As always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming to the Bunker Nation. And my name is Michael Bunker. For all of you future people, if you would, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You should subscribe to this channel. Hit the little bell icon that tells you, it's going to tell you when you can get, it's like notifications anytime that I come on. Because sometimes I just pop in. What will life be like after this? It'll be vastly different. But I can't tell you because one of 2 reasons. Either I'm a time traveler and I'm kept and not able to tell you because the time cops will come get me, or I don't know. Either one of those could be true. So go to YouTube, subscribe, watch the videos, hit the like button, leave a comment, all that kind of stuff. If you have a question for the next show, type it in the comment section. Not here, not right now, but in YouTube after the video post. Appreciate you guys. God bless you. I love you. Lord willing, I'll see you again. If not tomorrow, maybe the next day, but soon enough. And I'll see you when I see you.